The war that broke out between Iran and Israel on June 13, 2025, finally came to a halt on June 24th after a ceasefire was agreed. In this 12-day conflict, Iran suffered around 935 casualties, including more than 60 top commanders and nuclear scientists. About 5,000 people were injured, and many nuclear sites, military bases, missile depots, and oil and gas fields were destroyed. On the Israeli side, about 30 people were killed, and around 3,200 were seriously injured. Major cities like Tel Aviv, Ramat Gan, Bat Yam, Haifa, Bnei Brak, and Rishon LeZion came under heavy missile fire, affecting both civilian neighborhoods and military installations. So while things may seem calm for now, this is not the end. It's just a temporary pause. Because a lot of powerful countries actually don't want this war to end. The Iran-Israel conflict is much more complex than it looks. For example, on June 15th, right when the war was at its peak, 5 747 cargo planes took off from China. They flew over Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Turkmenistan, and then disappeared from radar near Iran. Officially, these planes were going to Europe, but no one ever saw them again. The fact that such important cargo planes vanished near Iran during the war raised a lot of questions. And soon after this, Iran suddenly started firing missiles that were not intercepted and were hitting targets with extreme precision. And then the United States finally stepped in. On June 22nd, 7 B-2 stealth bombers attacked Iran's Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan nuclear sites, forcing Iran to agree to the ceasefire. At least that's what Donald Trump claims. Trump said that those US strikes had completely destroyed Iran's nuclear program. But later, US intelligence reports showed that the strikes only pushed Iran's nuclear program back by a few months, and they didn't destroy it entirely. Iran, on the other hand, is now looking to end its military deal with Russia and buy J-10C fighter jets from China instead. These are fourth-point-5 generation combat aircraft. This shows that Iran is panic buying weapons right now. Similarly, on July 2nd, Iran's President Masoud Pezeshkian signed a law suspending cooperation with the International Atomic Energy Agency. So it's obvious that this peace won't last forever. Iran still hasn't given up its nuclear ambitions, and Israel still sees Iran as a serious threat to its existence. And now let's talk about the external powers involved in this war, starting with the United States, who has a very tricky role here. The US strongly supports Israel, supplying it with weapons, intelligence, and diplomatic backing, and that's because Israel is strategically very important for America. Israel is one of America's closest allies when it comes to collecting information and working together militarily in the Middle East. Because of Israel, the US keep an eye on countries like Iran, which America sees as a big threat. By keeping Israel secure, the United States ensures that it has a reliable partner in the region. This partnership helps America protect its oil supplies, guard its military bases, and maintain influence in a region that is politically very volatile but strategically very important. And there's also another critical factor: the powerful influence of the Israeli lobby in the United States. Groups like AIPAC are extremely influential in Washington. They lobby Congress and the White House to ensure US support for Israel remains strong. They organize fundraising campaigns, support pro-Israel political candidates, and have significant public influence. Through their efforts, they help shape American foreign policy to keep US-Israeli ties robust and resilient. However, America's support for Israel also creates challenges. America doesn't want another Middle Eastern war because it's costly, unpopular back home, and distracts it from other issues like China and Russia. Many recent polls indicate that many US citizens now prefer diplomatic solutions rather than military engagements abroad. Similarly, America faces a strategic dilemma. A major Iran-Israel conflict could distract Washington from real long-term threats like Russia's aggressive actions in Ukraine and China's rising influence in Asia. A full-blown Middle Eastern conflict would pull resources and attention away from these strategic challenges. So right now, the Trump administration is actively communicating with allies, including European and Arab states, to mediate or reduce tension between these two countries. While the US is stuck trying to support Israel without starting another war, there's another major player quietly watching from the sidelines, and it's China. It hasn't sent troops or weapons to Iran, but beneath the surface, Beijing's influence is quietly shaping this conflict. And it all ties back to two simple goals: securing energy and distracting the US. If we talk about energy, China is Iran's biggest oil buyer. In June 2025, China purchased a record 1.8 million barrels per day from Iran, which is about 90% of Iran's total oil exports, and that oil accounted for roughly 13.6% of China's crude oil imports. This isn't a minor trade, it's a crucial financial lifeline that keeps Iran's economy functioning despite heavy global sanctions. Similarly, China is deeply interested in building Iran's infrastructure. As part of their 25-year comprehensive strategic partnership signed in 2021, China pledged up to $400 billion in investments across Iranian oil, gas, railways, ports, and tech projects. In May 2025, the first freight train from Xi'an arrived at Iran's Aprin dry port, cutting sea transit time from 30 to 40 days to just 15 days. This new overland rail route reduces Iran's dependence on maritime routes like the Strait of Hormuz, making it less vulnerable to naval blockades. But why is China investing so much in Iran? The answer is simple. The location of Iran gives it a massive leverage. Iran sits at the crossroads of the Middle East, Central Asia, and the Indian Ocean, exactly where China wants to expand its Belt and Road Initiative. Controlling trade routes through Iran gives China faster land access to the Gulf and Europe. Plus, by keeping Iran close, China gains a strong regional partner to counter US influence in the Middle East without firing a single shot. So China is a very important player in this Iran-Israel conflict. China might seem far away, but it quietly benefits if this war continues, because a prolonged conflict distracts America as it will keep the US busy in the Middle East, and consequently, America will pay less attention to what China is doing in Asia, like Taiwan or the South China Sea. Secondly, the longer this conflict lasts, the more chances China gets to build a closer relationship with Iran. That means more affordable oil deals, new railways, and trading Chinese infrastructure for Iranian energy. Then comes Russia, whose role here is also very crucial. Russia and Iran have become close friends over the years. Russia sells Iran weapons, technology, and even helps Iran's nuclear energy projects. Russia has become Iran's top weapons supplier. In fact, from the late 1990s to mid-2000s, over 70% of Iran's major arms came from Moscow. This included everything from tanks and artillery to advanced air defense systems. In 2016, Russia delivered the powerful S-300 missile system to Iran. Russia and Iran are now collaborating on drones too. Russia has bought over 2,000 Iranian Shahed 136 drones for use in Ukraine, and in return, Iran is getting help from Russia to improve its drone and missile technology. Then there's nuclear cooperation. Russia built Iran's only operational nuclear power plant at Bushehr, and it still supplies the fuel and handles the nuclear waste. As of 2025, more than 600 Russian experts are working at the facility. Russia and Iran signed a major 20-year strategic partnership agreement in January 2025. This deal covers everything from energy and infrastructure to military cooperation, cyber defense, and intelligence sharing. In short, while Western powers are trying to isolate Iran, Russia is doing the exact opposite. But then why does Russia want the war between Iran and Israel to prolong? Well, the reason is simple. Just like China, Russia benefits when the US is distracted. Russia wants to expand its influence in Eastern Europe, Ukraine, and elsewhere. If America is busy dealing with conflicts in the Middle East, it cannot fully focus on containing Russia. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Russia also keeps good relations with Israel. It sells technology and weapons to the Israel too. In 2021, Russia exported around $1.7 billion worth of goods to Israel, including defense and technology products. From 2009 to 2015, Russia bought over $500 million of drones from Israel, including systems like the Bird Eye 400 and iView. So Russia isn't taking any sides, but it's actually playing both the sides. So if Israel and Iran go into a full-scale war, Russia could quietly gain in several ways. First, oil prices would likely skyrocket, since the Middle East supplies much of the world's energy, and guess who benefits from this? Russia, obviously, because it is one of the world's top oil and gas exporter. Higher prices mean more money for the Russian economy, especially when it's under Western sanctions. Secondly, a major war would pull America deeper into the Middle East, forcing the US to shift focus and resources away from Eastern Europe and Ukraine. This would give Russia a free hand to take bold steps in Ukraine without much interference. At the same time, by maintaining good ties with both Iran and Israel, Russia can offer itself as a neutral player, boosting Russia's image as a global power and giving it more diplomatic influence. So a full-scale Iran-Israel war works tremendously in Russia's favour. And lastly, we have the Arab nations. Arab countries like Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, Bahrain and Egypt are watching nervously. Historically, many Arab states opposed Israel, but today, countries like Bahrain and UAE have warmed up to Israel. In 2020, the UAE signed a peace deal with Israel called the Abraham Accords. This was a big shift. These countries started working with Israel on business, technology and even security. Saudi Arabia hasn't made a deal yet, but its leaders have had quiet talks with Israel and are now more open to working together, mainly because they both see Iran as a common threat. But these Arab countries also don't want another war on their doorstep, as it hurts their economies and risks their own stability. But they also don't trust Iran's regional ambitions. Many Arab governments worry that Iran is trying to spread its Shia influence across the region. Arab monarchies in Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, and the UAE see Iran's ideology as a serious threat to their rule. Iran's system is built on the idea of an Islamic revolution, where religious leaders hold power and challenge kings and royal families. That's the exact opposite of how Arab monarchies work, where power stays within the royal bloodlines. So privately, some Arab leaders may even quietly support Israeli efforts to weaken Iran, but publicly they remain neutral. So considering everything that we've discussed, America's cautious support for Israel, what China and Russia are quietly gaining from this conflict, the Arab world's deep distrust of Iran, and Iran's own nuclear ambitions, it is very hard to believe that this ceasefire will last long. Too many outside powers have something to gain from continued tension, and too many local players still see each other as threats. This pause in fighting might just be temporary, because the deeper issues haven't gone away, and sooner or later the calm may break. Subscribe our channel if you liked this video. See you in another interesting topic. Take care of yourselves.